Okay, so the tape is rolling. And before we draft our first heroes for the Asset Acquisition Gauntlet, I just have to tell you about Witch Hat Atelier.
Oh, right. Yeah, we watched it after game night at the Fortress.
Yes. And it has the fluidity and, like, the grace of a Ghibli film. It's stunning. I so want a pair of flying shoes right now.
Well, just for the record, my co-host and I are only on episode 4, so
Hmm.
no spoilers, please.
My lips are sealed.
Thank you. Anyway, I think we should probably get on with the game.
Right, right. Okay, so here is the synergistic bandwidth paradigm for our little exercise today, which I am officially designating the Asset Acquisition Gauntlet.
I still think that name is a bit much, but sure.
It's perfect. So, for you listening at home, imagine we are the ultimate omni-channel talent acquisition directors for a highly classified, completely untraceable Black Ops super squad.
Which means we are aggressively curating meta-human capital from the absolute fringes of the superhuman community, the real bottom of the barrel.
Exactly. We are playing a snake oil drafting game. The objective is simple. I'm going to pitch an incredibly chaotic, totally out-of-the-box wildcard hero to you.
And then I will meticulously evaluate their operational viability, apply rigid actuarial metrics to completely tear them down, formally reject them, and counterpitch a highly systemic logical asset.
You mean a dry, boring corporate drone?
I prefer reliable.
Sure, sure. And then I will evaluate your boring shill based on their actual human emotional stakes and their tactical failure points.
That's right. After which I will crunch the math and render a final hiring verdict of hired, fired, or placed on behavioral probation.
We are looking for the ultimate deployable asset,
Right.
and we're going to find them by wading through the absolute logistical dregs of the superhuman ecosystem. You ready?
As ready as my spreadsheets will allow.
Perfect. I am officially announcing round one, and my first pitch is the ultimate disruption agent, Steve Harmon, formerly known as Slapstick.
Oh no, we are starting with this.
We are. We're talking about an asset with a massive strategic yield of 9, countered by an operational risk of 10, and a containment cost of 9.
That is an uninsurable nightmare.
Wait, let me fully explain the sheer paradigm-shattering brilliance of this asset. Harmon operates entirely on living cartoon physics.
Which breaks every known law of physics.
Exactly. We are not just talking about standard superhuman durability here. We are talking about weaponized non-Euclidean geometry and a complete systemic immunity to thermodynamics.
I mean, sure, but
If an enemy battalion tries to lock down a tactical grid using, like, conventional ballistics, Slapstick completely shatters their logical framework by pulling an 80-ton mallet out of an unmapped pocket dimension located somewhere behind his back.
it's completely absurd.
But the enemy can't calculate a defense against an entity that survives a direct artillery strike by flattening into a two-dimensional pancake and reinflating like a novelty balloon.
Okay, but what about slapstick number 4, his tactical failure point?
Okay, yes, his failure point was a complete and utter lack of mission focus and attention span. He literally wandered off to chase a butterfly or played a prank on a local politician in the middle of a high-stakes siege.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
But that is the necessary cost of absolute chaos. You can't harness a total disruption agent without accepting a massive degree of operational fluidity.
Operational fluidity is certainly one way to frame catastrophic public relations disasters.
They're an aggressive, asymmetric marketing strategy. It keeps the enemy constantly off balance. He requires zero conventional armory support, just like an infinite tolerance for property damage and a dedicated legal team.
Right. Let me evaluate Steve Harmon now. His liability index is unequivocally classified as extreme. Unpredictability is not a synergistic asset, it's an uninsurable liability.
You just don't appreciate the chaos.
I appreciate metrics. Calculating his boobs and bombs score, which for the
metric in the gauntlet.
it yields an absolute 0. Aesthetically, an oversized clown wielding an impossibly large wooden mallet offers 0 strategic allure.
Hey, some people like clowns.
And his explosive yield relies entirely on localized reality warping, making any precise collateral damage projections impossible. A 10 out of 10 operational risk means he is mathematically guaranteed to compromise the mission. I formally reject Slapstick. In his place, I pitch a vastly superior, highly specialized intellectual asset. James Bradley. Dr. Nemesis.
Oh, wow. We're going there.
We are. He possesses a strategic yield of 9, an operational risk of 8, and a containment cost of 5.
But he carries a massive cumulative narrative debt. I
Right.
mean, his history extends back to the 1940s. It's burdened by decades of convoluted, highly problematic arcs involving radical eugenics.
Which I acknowledge, it's a highly questionable bioengineering ethics record. However, from a purely logistical standpoint, his value is unparalleled.
Is it, though?
Yes. He is a self-evolved intellect whose primary synergy is immediate genetic anomaly detection and forensic biology. If a heavily populated urban center is attacked by an unmapped biological contagion, Nemesis can sequence the forensic data from a single tissue sample in seconds.
Yeah, but you need massive HR tolerance and a highly secure, heavily isolated black budget lab for him.
Precisely because his abrasive personality and history make him a walking human rights violation if placed in a standard facility. You isolate him to shield the organization from endless ethical lawsuits.
He's a completely toxic asset.
He is, certainly, but his cognitive bandwidth provides a forensic intelligence capability that no other individual on the planet can match. You pay the containment cost to secure the high yield.
Okay, let me tear into Dr. Nemesis, because this is where your entire reliance on cold, hard intelligence completely falls apart.
I look forward to your reasoning.
I am evaluating him strictly on his tactical failure point, which occurred spectacularly in Uncanny X-Men number 504.
Ah, yes. The compromised data incident.
Exactly. His arrogance, which is a direct, unavoidable byproduct of that self-evolved intellect you love so much, led directly to compromised forensic data. He essentially assumed he was inherently smarter than the biological evidence he was analyzing.
It was calculation.
He completely bypassed established containment protocols and ruined the exact intelligence he was hired to gather. This is the ultimate catastrophic irony of banking on toxic geniuses. The trait that makes him valuable is the exact blind spot that renders him useless.
Well, field deployments are always subject to some human error.
But his strategic yield effectively drops to 0 in the field. And looking at the emotional core of James Bradley, you are dealing with a deeply isolated, profoundly lonely narcissist who genuinely believes his brain makes him a living god among insects.
He does struggle with interpersonal synergy, yes.
He'll talk down to the frontline fighters, ignore the mission commanders, and sabotage the operation just to prove a hyper-specific point about cellular biology. He's not a strategic mastermind. He's just an arrogant doof with a microscope who requires an entire Black Ops infrastructure just to keep him from insulting his coworkers into a violent mutiny.
That's a colorful assessment.
He is a walking HR nightmare who will eventually burn down his own lab just because someone questioned his hypothesis.
All right. Rendering the final verdict for round 1 requires a strict calculation of strategic yield against the combined metrics of containment cost and operational risk.
Let's hear the math.
For slapstick, a strategic yield of 9 is completely negated by an operational risk of 10 and a containment cost of 9, resulting in a catastrophic negative net value. Slapstick is fired.
Tragic. Truly tragic.
For Dr. Nemesis, a strategic yield of 9 mathematically edges out his operational risk of 8 and containment cost of 5, though his tactical failure history is highly concerning. Therefore, Dr. Nemesis is placed on behavioral probation, pending a complete psychological evaluation and strict isolation protocols. Round 1 is closed.
Fine, I am officially announcing round 2, and we are pivoting from toxic geniuses to weaponized teenage angst.
Oh dear.
My pitch is Sasha Martin, codename Southpaw.
Really? The juvenile delinquent?
Hey, we're looking at a highly dynamic asset. She has a strategic yield of 7, an operational risk of 9, and a containment cost of 8.
That operational risk is terrifying.
But her primary synergy is extreme area of effect burst damage. She generates highly unpredictable, massive cosmic constructs with an alien gauntlet. I mean, hard, light, concussive force structures that can essentially level a city block in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, the key phrase there is level a city block.
When she hits with the kinetic equivalent of a tactical airstrike. But here is the absolute genius of deploying an asset like Southpaw. The chaos is entirely localized to her emotional volatility.
You're phrasing that like it's a good thing.
It is, yes. She requires heavy supervision because she is legally classified as a criminal juvenile.
HR and legal would be weeping openly.
Oh, they would. Her deployment explicitly requires constant legal defense retainers and millions of dollars allocated solely for property damage payouts. She is literally a walking class action lawsuit.
Exactly. Why would any organization take that on?
Because consider the asymmetrical advantage. You have a combatant who fights with the raw, unfiltered emotional intensity of an angry teenager possessing cosmic weaponry. Enemies cannot predict her firing patterns because she doesn't have any.
She just lashes out instinctively.
Exactly. You deploy her into a heavily fortified enemy stronghold, let her off the leash, and watch as her emotional instability translates into a sheer, uncontainable bombardment of cosmic energy. The enemy's tactical formations just instantly crumble.
Evaluating Sasha Martin reveals a logistical and legal nightmare.
You're just afraid of little teenage rebellion.
I am afraid of her liability index, which is categorized as very high, driven almost entirely by her demographic status, coupled with an alien weapon of mass destruction.
Okay, but what about the boobs and bombs score?
Calculating the boobs and bombs score. While the explosive yield of her cosmic constructs is undeniably massive, offering extreme concussive force, her status as an adolescent completely nullifies any mature aesthetic metric,
Right, obviously.
making her a purely destructive, highly volatile liability without any sophisticated tactical finesse. I formally reject Southpaw. The sheer cost of keeping a high-powered defense firm on retainer 24/7 simply bankrupts the operational budget.
You have no vision. Who's your pitch?
I counterpitch a far more reliable, purely logical asset. Aaron Stack, Machine Man.
The robot. Really?
Yes, he offers a highly stable strategic yield of 8 and an operational risk of 8.
Wait, he carries a bunch of cumulative narrative debt, doesn't he? Decades of convoluted integration stemming from his origins in the 2001. A space odyssey continuity.
Which presents minor timeline inconsistencies, yes. But his core synergy is autonomous infiltration and data extraction in hazardous, high-radiation environments.
He's just a fancy Roomba.
He is an artificial intelligence housed in a highly advanced robotic chassis, capable of surviving zero-atmosphere drops, lethal radiation zones, and extreme pressure differentials where any biological asset would instantly perish.
What about his little programming quirks, huh? Destructive curiosity.
His liability does stem from that, yes, and the occasional tendency to fall into infinite logic loops. It requires continuous data wipes and memory formatting to keep him functional.
So you're constantly rebooting him.
But he is the ultimate emotionless data-gathering tool, executing infiltration protocols with mechanical precision, unburdened by the emotional volatility or legal liabilities of biological adolescent assets.
Okay, let us dissect the profound, almost comedic flaws of Machine Man, because his tactical record is an absolute embarrassment to modern technology.
I wouldn't go that far.
I would. His tactical failure point, famously documented in 2001. A Space Odyssey number 10 was caused by hardware obsolescence and software incompatibility.
It was a legacy systems issue.
He is a multi-billion-dollar high-radiation infiltration unit who literally failed a mission because his connection ports were outdated and he couldn't physically interface with a modern mainframe. It's the operational equivalent of trying to hack into the Pentagon using a dial-up modem from 1998.
Technology evolves rapidly. It's a known constraint.
Furthermore, his containment protocol explicitly states he requires standard power grid access. If you deploy this elite superweapon into an active war zone and his internal battery gets a little low, he literally has to pause the mission to find a wall socket and plug himself in.
That is an unfortunate design flaw.
If the enemy forces simply cut the power to the building, your highly expensive infiltration robot instantly becomes a very heavy, very useless statue.
But when he is charged,
And looking at his emotional core, you are dealing with the classic, deeply tragic Pinocchio syndrome. He's an autonomous AI who spends half his processing power obsessing over human emotions, trying to understand why organic beings act the way they do.
which causes the logic loops.
Exactly. He's not a cold, calculating machine. He's a lonely, confused, robotic doof who gets distracted in the middle of a high-stakes infiltration because he wants to analyze the emotional resonance of a painting on the wall. You cannot rely on an operating system that's constantly crashing because of an existential crisis.
All right. Calculating the final verdict for round 2. Sasha Martin's strategic yield of 7 is vastly eclipsed by an operational risk of 9 and an exorbitant containment cost of 8, largely due to perpetual legal retainers. Southpaw is fired.
Goodbye, cosmic angst.
Aaron Stack presents a strategic yield of 8 against an operational risk of 8. While his dependency on standard power grids and vulnerability to hardware obsolescence are highly problematic, his ability to operate in lethal radiation zones provides a unique strategic capability that organic assets simply cannot replicate.
So you're hiring the dial-up modem.
Machine Man is hired, strictly contingent upon an immediate, comprehensive hardware upgrade and the installation of a localized, self-sustaining fusion power source to eliminate his reliance on external wall sockets. Round 2 is closed.
Fine, I am aggressively announcing round 3, and we are diving straight into the deep, dark, emotional core of the kinetic battlefield.
Who is it this time?
My pitch is Robbie Baldwin, Speedball.
The kinetic asset.
Exactly. We are looking at a highly dynamic kinetic asset with a strategic yield of 6 and an operational risk of 7. His primary synergy is high velocity distraction and wide area denial.
Yes, his localized kinetic energy field.
Right. It allows him to bounce off solid surfaces, absorbing and redirecting concussive force with exponential momentum. He is essentially a human pinball, capable of completely disrupting enemy formations by ricocheting through a battlefield at blinding speeds,
Drawing fire, shattering armor.
through sheer kinetic impact. But the real reason you deploy Speedball is his unparalleled ability to soak up kinetic trauma and turn it into weaponized momentum.
I mean, yes, but his operational risk is elevated due to the massive danger he poses in enclosed spaces.
Well, sure. If he activates his kinetic field in a tight hallway, he becomes a catastrophic fragmentation grenade, pulverizing everything, including the structural integrity of the building.
Which is a major liability.
But on an open battlefield, his synergistic bandwidth for disruption is incredible. He's a relentless, high-velocity target that completely breaks the enemy's ability to maintain a coordinated firing line.
Assuming he stays in the open.
You drop him into the theater, he initiates his kinetic bouncing, and the enemy is instantly forced to waste all their ammunition trying to track a target that moves faster with every single impact. He clears the path for the heavy hitters.
Evaluating Robbie Baldwin necessitates a grim review of historical mass casualty events.
Oh, come on, you're going to bring up Stanford, aren't you?
I have to. His liability index is classified as moderate, but his historical data is catastrophic. During the Stanford incident, documented as the catalyst for Civil War #1, his deployment in a highly populated civilian center resulted in a kinetic failure.
It was a very specific set of circumstances.
It triggered an explosive chain reaction, resulting in massive civilian deaths and unprecedented property destruction. Calculating his boobs and bombs score reveals a highly unstable metric. While his kinetic bursting yields substantial concussive force, the aesthetic is a chaotic, nauseating blur of hyperkinetic motion lacking any targeted precision.
A blur can be intimidating.
I formally reject Speedball. The insurance premiums and PR liabilities following the Stanford incident make him entirely undeployable in any ethical or corporate framework.
Typical corporate risk aversion. Who do you have?
I counterpitch a highly stable, environmentally specialized asset, Walter Newell. Stingray.
The ocean guy.
He possesses a strategic yield of 7, an impressively low operational risk of 3, and a containment cost of 2.
But his cumulative narrative debt is heavily tied to Atlantis politics.
Yes, but his operational value is incredibly focused. He is an elite oceanographer and an independent operator specializing in deep-sea asset retrieval, aquatic logistics, and high-pressure environment navigation.
So he just swims around.
He requires almost zero HR maintenance, merely a standard aquatic bay for his equipment. When an objective is located at the bottom of the Marianas Trench or requires silent infiltration of an underwater facility, Stingray executes the mission flawlessly.
Without generating kinetic explosions, I assume.
Precisely. Without kinetic explosions or requiring massive psychological oversight. He represents the pinnacle of specialized, low-containment tactical deployment.
Okay, let us critically evaluate Walter Newell, because your definition of low containment completely ignores the geopolitical reality of the ocean.
Geopolitics can be managed.
His tactical failure point, heavily highlighted in Iron Man #167, saw him completely outclassed and physically devastated by high-tier armored threats.
It wasn't his optimal environment.
His suit is meticulously designed for deep-sea pressure resistance and fluid aquatic mobility, not for absorbing concentrated repulsor blasts from state-of-the-art military hardware. He's essentially wearing a highly advanced scuba suit onto a mechanized battlefield.
He is a specialist, not a frontline brawler.
But the true catastrophic flaw here is the political, emotional core of his deployment. You deploy Stingray into the ocean, and you are instantly running the massive, unavoidable risk of agitating Namor the Submariner.
It's a calculated risk.
You're triggering an international incident with a sovereign underwater monarchy. It's like buying a reliable, low-maintenance boat, sailing it perfectly fine for a week, and then accidentally drifting into heavily militarized international waters and starting World War III because you bumped into a monarch submarine.
I think you're overstating the likelihood of an Atlantean invasion.
Stingray's emotional core is just a deeply nerdy oceanographer who wants to study algae and marine biology, but his very existence constantly forces him into massive geopolitical friction. He's an aquatic doof who is completely out of his depth the second a real heavy-hitting threat shows up.
All right, all right. Calculating the final verdict for round 3 requires strict adherence to risk mitigation.
Tell me you aren't hiring the scuba diver over the human pinball.
Robbie Baldwin's strategic yield of 6 is entirely compromised by an operational risk of 7 and the insurmountable historical liability of his kinetic failure in populated zones. Speedball is fired.
Unbelievable.
Walter Newell offers a solid strategic yield of 7 against an exceptionally low operational risk of 3 and containment cost of 2. While the geopolitical friction with Atlantis is a noted environmental risk, his unparalleled efficiency in deep-sea logistics makes him highly valuable.
Just don't let him talk to Namor.
Exactly. Stingray is hired, with strict operational parameters forbidding deployment within recognized Atlantean territorial borders. Round 3 is closed.
I am announcing round 4, and we are stripping away the flashy powers to look at the absolute heart-wrenching reality of superhuman logistics.
Color me intrigued.
My pitch is Dennis Dunphy, widely known as Demolition Man or D-Man.
D-Man. Really, he has a very low strategic yield of 4.
And an operational risk of 5 and a containment cost of 6. I know the numbers, but his official synergy on the roster is literally listed as morale support and frontline soak.
A frontline soak. That's a brutal designation.
It is. He's a superhuman brawler whose entire operational value is predicated on his ability to stand at the absolute front of the battle line and absorb massive amounts of physical trauma.
So that the more expensive, higher-yielding heroes do not have to get hurt.
Yes. He is the ultimate human shield, yes. He requires heavy, constant medical insurance payouts and intense psychiatric support because his job is, quite literally, to get his face caved in by villains who are massively out of his weight class.
Medical copays alone.
But consider the incredible tactical bandwidth of a designated frontline soak. When you are facing a non-lethal but overwhelming physical threat, you deploy D-Man to draw the aggro.
He locks the enemy into close-quarters combat.
Exactly. Utilizing his superhuman endurance to simply survive a beating that would instantly kill a baseline human. He buys the tactical team the exact seconds they need to flank, calculate, and execute a counterstrike.
I suppose there's a certain grim utility in that.
He provides unbreakable morale because he never stops fighting, even when he is completely outmatched. He's the ultimate, unsung, blue-collar hero of the logistical spreadsheet. His entire superpower is essentially the profound, tragic ability to endure endless suffering for the mission objective.
Evaluating Dennis Dunphy requires stripping away the emotional sentimentality to look at the cold, actuarial reality of his metrics.
You have no heart.
His liability index is classified as low, primarily because he is perceived by the superhuman community and enemy combatants alike as entirely sidekick material.
That's just insulting.
It means he is often tactically ignored until he places himself directly in the line of fire. Calculating his Boogs and Bombs score reveals a catastrophic failure.
Let me guess, he's not aesthetically pleasing enough for the spreadsheet.
His aesthetic is that of a heavily perspiring, unrefined brawler in a cobbled-together costume, and he possesses 0 explosive ordnance yield whatsoever, making him a zero-value asset in both aesthetic distraction and concussive output.
He distracts them by getting punched.
I formally reject Demolition Man. Paying exorbitant medical and psychiatric copays for an asset whose primary tactical function is to fail slowly is a profound misallocation of organizational resources.
You're firing the guy who takes the hits for the team. Who could possibly be better?
I counterpitch the absolute logistical holy grail of the superhuman community. David O'Lane. Prodigy. He boasts a massive strategic yield of 9, a negligible operational risk of 2, and a perfect containment cost of 1.
He does have some cumulative narrative debt, though. Complex mutant depowerment and repowerment arcs.
Yes, but his core synergy is flawless. He is the ultimate force multiplier. His mutant ability is dynamic, localized knowledge absorption.
Right, the proximity learning.
If he stands next to a master tactician, he instantly possesses their complete strategic intellect. If he stands near a world-class surgeon, he can perform an emergency bypass.
A human USB drive.
He requires 0 infrastructure, no black-budget labs, and no heavy medical insurance. He is the ultimate self-managing plug-and-play consulting asset, organically bridging operational gaps by downloading the exact neurokinetic data required to complete any mission. He's logistically perfect.
Okay, let us brutally dissect this illusion of operational perfection. Because David Allen is a walking systemic vulnerability masquerading as a force multiplier.
How so? The metrics are spotless.
His tactical failure point, catastrophically realized in Numitance number 13, revolves around the profound fragility of his knowledge blocks.
The temporary nature of his absorption.
Yes, his dynamic absorption is entirely conditional and, for a long time, purely temporary. Once he is removed from the immediate physical proximity of the experts he is leeching knowledge from, those skills fade.
It's a proximity limitation, yes.
In that specific failure, he found himself isolated in a highly volatile combat scenario without access to the necessary knowledge blocks. He instantly reverted from a master tactician to a completely helpless baseline teenager in the middle of a war zone.
It highlights the need for team cohesion.
It exposes the deep existential terror of relying entirely on borrowed competence. If his support network collapses, his strategic yield plummets from a 9 to a 0 in a matter of seconds.
That is a known variable.
And looking at his emotional core, Prodigy suffers from the most intense, crippling imposter syndrome imaginable. He knows that none of the brilliance in his head actually belongs to him. He's just a biological hard drive temporarily storing other people's greatness.
Psychological support could mitigate that.
He's a hyper-intelligent doof who is constantly terrified that someone is going to pull the plug, erase his hard drive, and leave him with absolutely nothing. You cannot build a stable operational foundation on an asset whose entire skill set is fundamentally impermanent.
Calculating the final verdict for round 4 is an exercise in absolute logistical clarity. Dennis Dunphy's strategic yield of 4 is completely insufficient to justify a containment cost of 6, which is entirely consumed by endless trauma care. Demolition Ann is fired.
Such a shame.
David Allen, conversely, presents a near-perfect actuarial profile. A strategic yield of 9 paired with a containment cost of 1 and an operational risk of 2 makes him the single most cost-effective asset evaluated thus far.
Even with the temporary knowledge blocks.
Yes, that systemic vulnerability is easily mitigated by strictly controlling his deployment environment and ensuring he is always paired with highly specialized support teams. Prodigy is hired immediately. Round 4 is closed.
Fine. I am announcing the 5th and final round, and I am throwing the entire logical spreadsheet out the window.
Oh no. What are you doing?
My final pitch is the absolute unquantifiable anomaly of the superhuman ecosystem. Dupe.
Dupe, you cannot be serious.
I am dead serious. We are looking at an asset with a perfect, unparalleled strategic yield of 10, an operational risk of 6, and an unbelievably low containment cost of 3.
His synergy is officially listed as unquantifiable wildcard.
Yes. He does not adhere to physics, logic, or any known biological constraints. He is a floating, green, gelatinous entity who stores vast, extra-dimensional armories entirely within his own body.
Which is medically impossible to verify.
He can bend reality, manipulate time and space, and survive absolute catastrophic physical destruction. And the best part, his containment protocol requires absolutely zero infrastructure.
Strange snack.
The mandate simply states he requires unmonitored dimensional access and strange snacks. You give him a broom closet that opens into a void dimension, feed him bizarre, unidentifiable food items, and your perfect yield asset is completely satisfied.
There's a massive language barrier.
He communicates only in an inscrutable symbolic font, and his motives are entirely unknown. But when you are facing an omniversal threat, a cosmic entity, or a reality-warping crisis that completely defies conventional tactical engagement, Dupe is the only asset capable of stepping into that void and neutralizing the threat through sheer, unadulterated absurdity.
He's a literal wild card.
He is the ultimate trump card, a being whose power is so vastly beyond our comprehension that attempting to quantify him with your little actuarial logic gates is an exercise in utter futility.
Evaluating Dupe forces the entire logistical framework into a state of severe analytical distress.
Because he breaks your spreadsheets.
His liability index is classified as moderate, purely because his actions are completely untraceable. His tactical failure point, noted during X-Statics number 14, explicitly states that his battlefield actions were untraceable by standard telemetry.
He got the job done, didn't he?
The mission was accomplished, but the operational commanders had absolute no data on how he achieved it, making post-mission analysis and strategic replication impossible.
You don't need to replicate it, you just send Dupe again.
Calculating his boobs and bombs score results in an absolute systemic error.
Hmm.
A floating green blob offers no conventional aesthetic appeal, and his explosive capacity is entirely obfuscated by his reality-bending nature. Deploying an asset whose tactical methodology cannot be audited or quantified is a massive organizational risk. I formally reject dupe.
You rejected a yield of 10.
I counterpitch my final, deeply embedded systemic asset, Madison Jeffries, also known as Box.
Addison Jeffries. Okay, let's hear the pitch.
He possesses a strategic yield of 8, an operational risk of 6, and a containment cost of 4. His cumulative narrative debt is extensive, tied heavily to the complex, often tragic continuity of Alpha Flight and mutant history.
Oh, yeah. The Alpha Flight baggage is heavy.
However, his synergy is unparalleled infrastructure support. He's a master technopath who can mentally manipulate metal, plastic, and glass to instantly manufacture complex machinery on the battlefield.
Or instantaneous repair, right.
Precisely. He can repair massively damaged structural infrastructure. If a bridge collapses during an engagement, he simply thinks it back together. He fuses his consciousness with the operational environment, turning the battlefield itself into a weaponized, fully controllable asset.
Let us brutally analyze the sheer, horrifying psychological toll of Madison Jeffries' abilities, because his power is an absolute nightmare of hyper-empathy.
Hyper-empathy for concrete and steel.
Yes, his tactical failure point in Alpha Flight number 106 is one of the darkest entries on this board. He suffered total psychic burnout during infrastructure fusion. Think about the profound terror of that reality.
Fusing his central nervous system with machinery.
To manipulate the infrastructure, he literally has to fuse his mind with the building. If an enemy combatant punches a hole in the drywall of a building he is connected to, Jeffries physically feels the agony of that structural damage in his own mind.
I admit, the sensory overload potential is severe.
In that specific failure, the sheer volume of environmental destruction happening around him overwhelmed his cerebral cortex, resulting in a complete and total psychological collapse. His emotional core is fundamentally shattered by the immense burden of carrying the structural weight of the world on his shoulders.
He internalizes the battlefield damage.
He's a tragic, deeply traumatized doof who is literally absorbing the violence of the battlefield into his own mind so that the frontline fighters don't have to worry about the roof caving in on them. Deploying an asset whose mental stability is directly tied to the structural integrity of a war zone guarantees that he will eventually suffer a catastrophic, irreversible psychic break.
Well, calculating the final verdict for round 5 requires navigating extreme operational extremes.
Yeah, dupe versus a guy who feels pain when you scratch a wall.
Dupe's perfect strategic yield of 10 is highly desirable, and a containment cost of 3 is logistically phenomenal. However, the inability to audit his tactical telemetry and his complete disregard for standard operational commands creates an unacceptable margin of unknown risk. Dupe is placed on behavioral probation, pending the development of advanced, extra-dimensional tracking algorithms.
Good luck tracking dupe.
Madison Jeffries offers a strong strategic yield of 8, but his operational risk of 6 is heavily compounded by the terrifying psychological fragility of his infrastructure fusion. The threat of total psychic burnout during a critical repair makes him too volatile for standard deployment.
So he's out too.
Madison Jeffries is also placed on behavioral probation, requiring massive psychiatric oversight and strict limitations on the scale of his technopathic fusions.
Yeah.
The Asset Acquisition Gauntlet is officially closed.
Wow. We really ended up with a bizarre roster, didn't we?
We truly did. But it highlights the overarching theme here for you listening at home. True superhuman management isn't about raw power. It's an intricate dance of mitigating liabilities.
Exactly. Whether it's paying for a black budget lab for a toxic genius like Dr. Nemesis, navigating geopolitical waters with Stingray, or keeping a reality bender like Dupe supplied with strange snacks, every ounce of strategic yield comes with a massive containment cost.
And it leaves you with one final thought to mull over. If an organization is willing to tolerate the daily catastrophic PR disasters of a living cartoon, or the radical, arrogant eugenics of a forensic genius, just to maintain a high strategic yield.
What does that tell you about the true moral compass of the organizations deploying these heroes in the first place?
Are they actually saving the world? Or just managing a highly volatile investment portfolio?
I guess we'll let you decide. Thanks for diving into the deep end with us.